Hello, and if you're watching this the day it was uploaded, Happy Father's Day! A while ago, I did something similar to this for Mother's Day, in which I listed some of the books my mom read to me as bedtime stories, and I mentioned that I wanted to do something similar for Father's Day. I am a big advocate that we should consider Father's Day as important because men need to be encouraged and deserve the praise for the things they do as fathers. So I decided to do something similar in a bookish fashion for my father. Now, my mother was the one that probably wanted to read to us the most as kids. I'm pretty sure she came into the marriage knowing what book she wanted to read before she even found out she was pregnant. And same. But my father still had a huge impact on my reading habits simply by the books he had in the house. Now, growing up, we weren't the wealthiest of families, so when I was in my middle school years and an average reader going up through my high school years, we didn't really have the money to constantly buy the bookworm new books, and so I would read whatever we had in the house, and it ended up being a lot of my dad's mass market paperbacks. As a result, I came across a couple genres that I probably wouldn't have come across otherwise because they're not really marketed to my demographic. They're not really marketed towards women. They're very much marketed towards men. However, I love them. Even despite some more problematic elements, I really love them. And there's basically two, but they encompass a wide variety of books. Now, the first one, I believe its official name is political thriller. I refer to them as action books. And this is your terrorists trying to plant a bomb and a special operative team is fighting back, and it's gunfights and it's a lot of death and it's, basically fighting against the clock to save the world, or at the very least the city, or the president, or stop this, a super weapon getting to the wrong hands, something to that extent. Something that is basically an action movie, but I'm pretty sure in books it's referred to as political thriller. This is your Clive Cussler, your Tom Clancy, that whole set. Now, I realize that this genre of books has a very large problem with diversity, especially in their protagonists. And their protagonists are very, very singular, like less diverse than almost any other genre, to the extent where every or nearly every protagonist of these kind of books will be a white straight male in his usually mid to late 30s, maybe early 40s, somewhere from the American Midwest or an old-fashioned American city like Philadelphia or Boston. He will be usually some kind of Christian, either Catholic or Protestant. Maybe he turned his back on God or is atheist, but not hardcore angry atheist. He usually has had at least one love of his life, a lost love. He will also fall in love over the course of the story. She will inevitably be put in danger. There are some cases where they might have a little bit of Native American blood, but it will only be half, and will usually be from his mother's side. That is 90% of the protagonists of these books. And I realize that is a huge diversity problem. I'm aware. However, there are just some aspects of these books that I don't get in other genres. I love the shootouts and the ticking of the time bomb and the clock running down and huge gigantic stakes, and if they fail, all of these people are going to die, and they have to use all of this special training, and they're put in really tough situations. They have to make quick choices. It's high energy and it's fast paced and non-stop for the majority of the book. One of the books that I actually gave my father for Christmas in the How Well Do I Know My Family's Bookish Tastes Challenge that I gave myself for Christmas last year, the entire book took place in 24 hours. This entire thick, I think it was 500-page mass market paperback takes place in 24 hours, but it's going to be filled with gunfights and all of that. I literally want to take that book back from him, just borrow it to read it because the premise sounded so cool to me, because that's what I got from my father. Now, however, that's not the genre that I inherited from him that I love the most. The one I love the most is what I like to call, and I don't know its official name, the Atlantis genre. Now, this is probably, honestly, I don't know what its official name would be. Like if you were to look for like, if you were to try and like query this book, I don't know what agents you would look for because I don't know what it's actually called, but I call it the Atlantis genre. And this is sort of a subgenre of the action genre in which a long lost artifact has been found or evidence of some ancient treasure has been discovered and they have to go across the world to track it down. I call this the Atlantis genre because most of the time it's Atlantis or Atlantis related. This could also, though, be related to something like the Da Vinci Code or something biblical. However, not a lot of authors are willing to jump into that as much because that's a little bit more controversial. However, you'd be surprised how many times the Vatican either is the bad guys or has secret information about whatever ancient treasure has been unearthed somewhere in their vaults, or that kind, or an ancient brotherhood that has been tasked with protecting this thing throughout the ages, and they're still around today in secret, and the protagonist is coming face to face with them, and there's more gunfights. This one I particularly love because it calls to the history geek in me. I have a degree in history and a master's degree in museum studies, and I can pretty much tell you that I would totally go on a romp across the world to find the long lost treasure of Atlantis or the tomb of Hercules or something. I would do it. I wanted to be an Egyptologist when I was a kid, so if you were to tell me that, like, they discovered the wife of King Tut and it finally puts to bed whether or not he was murdered, I would go on that trip and I would fight what would be an ancient group, the Magi. I would do all of that. The particular series that I love the most, and this was taken, well, this particular one wasn't taken, but the series I got off the shelves that I then asked for some of the books from the series for Christmas, is by Andy McDermott. I don't think it has an official name. I call it the Nina Wilde and Eddie Chase series, as those are the name of the two main protagonists. But every book is this. Every book is Nina and Eddie, who are the archaeologist and badass bodyguard respectively, trying to uncover with the flavor of the week ancient thing that must be uncovered, from Atlantis to the Tomb of Hercules to Excalibur, because in a lot of cases these things can also be totally fictional, but in this world they're not. I loved this series, and again, it has that idea where it's very fast-paced, and the stakes aren't necessarily as high as in political thrillers, because usually if people die, it's because they kept searching for it. However, just it encompasses so much of the world a lot of the time. They'll have to go from one city to another city to this other city, and all the different cultures, and having to put together clues. Like, I would go on one of these adventures if I could. Like, my favorite Disney movie is Atlantis: The Lost Empire. I would do this if I could. And it is so shocking to me that I probably wouldn't have come across this as much as I did if my father hadn't had these books in the house. And the best part is that these days, like, my dad and I have conversations about books. And I remember I told him about one of my favorite action books that actually has a lot of diversity, The Killer Collective by Barry Eisler. And he was looking it up. Like, my dad was taking one of my suggestions for the genre he got me into reading. Like, it was so cool to me. Now, the only sad part is that I am now on a mission. Because my father, while he loves action and crime and sci-fi, he does not like fantasy at all. Now, I think he doesn't like soft magic fantasy. I think if I could find him a gritty war, hard magic fantasy, I think I get him into it. That's like my big mission with my dad, is to find a fantasy book, even if it just has limited fantasy, that he would like, in honor of everything that he helped me uncover. And I am so grateful to both of my parents for being as bookish as they were and for supporting my love of books as much as they did. I've mentioned it before, but when I was in middle school, I was a voracious reader that read 3 to 4 books a week, and I never had the same book twice in 2 days. And they didn't have the money to support that habit financially. They couldn't be getting me new books because, you know, hardcovers were still $15 to $20 back then, and they couldn't afford that kind of thing being a teacher and a pastor with 4 kids. But I always had access to a library. There were always books in the house we could read. They still facilitated a love of reading while not having a lot of money to just go out and buy a ton of books. And in a lot of ways, I look at the relationship, the bookish relationship I have with my parents now, and I'm so grateful for it that I can have these long book conversations with both of my parents, and my mom and I can swap suggestions and ideas, and my mom is doing booktube readathons now, and my dad is like genuinely like hearing me out when I talk about the lack of diversity and in political thrillers and saying, yeah, the protagonists usually are a very certain kind of person. And I'm just so glad for both of my parents. And so I wanted to do both a Mother and Father's Day video. So thank you so much. This is rambling. I didn't write out what I was going to say beforehand. But if there is a genre or a book or something similar that you were inspired to read by one of your parents, I would love to hear about it. I will also link my Mother's Day video below if you'd like to hear about the books that my mother read to me when I was little. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.